After 1 week of free agency, what are the Panthers' remaining needs? We'll talk about it right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where every single Friday throughout the offseason, I'm going to be right here answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions. The best way to get those into me is by either adding me or DMing, but of course, following me on Twitter at Julian Council. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started today. Let's talk free agency, as the Carolina Panthers are a week plus into the free agency period, and they're starting to shift their focus towards the draft next month in Detroit. On yesterday's show, we broke down the Carolina Panthers free agency move so far and how much better the team has gotten from last Monday to today on Wednesday. So it's been 9 days, but the Panthers still have some more moves to be made. Now we're looking at this part of the free agency. I thought Jonathan Stewart, the Panthers' all-time leading rusher, had a great analogy for how things are looking at right now. You're at the bottom of a bag of chips, he said, or it's a bunch of crumbs and you're just trying to find that final full chip out there. There aren't that many players that are going to make a massive impact on teams in 2024 that are still available. Most of the money has been spent on the marquee players. The guys who are out there making visits don't have much of a market. Now you're going to see players like Chase Young, who got a $13 million guaranteed deal in New Orleans, still make a couple of bucks, but that's only 1 year for Chase Young. And we'll see how big of an impact he can have in New Orleans. You're going to also see some other players who are going to have some incentive-laden deals that's going to say they're going to be up to $15 million. One of those players, Carolina Panthers, were hoping to get here to Carolina, but that never happened. We'll talk about him momentarily. But overall, the big-time money has been spent. The big-time players are off the board. The guys that you're bringing in are players that are going to be a short-term, one-year fix, or just, quite honestly, depth pieces. That's what the Carolina Panthers are looking at. That's what the rest of the NFL are looking at. And there are still teams that think that some of the players they're going to sign can be impact players, but the likelihood of that happening is very low. So with all that being said, let's look at the Carolina Panthers on offense and on defense, position by position, to see what the remaining needs are for this team. Starting off, of course, offensively, with the Carolina Panthers had a lot of work to do heading into the offseason. I said yesterday, the offense, it has gotten better, particularly on the offensive line, starting off at the guard position. They've signed Robert Hunt. They've signed Damian Lewis. They're good there when it comes to starting offensive guards. Brady Christensen would be the likely first guy off the bench to replace either one of those guys if something were to, God forbid, happen to them this year, which means Cade Mays, Chandler Zavala, Nash Jensen, some of the younger players, they can be backups, continue to grow and develop in this new offensive scheme under Joe Gilbert and this new offensive line staff. That is the best case scenario for the Carolina Panthers, bringing Hunt, bringing in Lewis, having Christensen still be a backup, but he can also play a tackle position if needed. I still would like to see, as far as remaining needs out there, I would still like to see the coaching staff, really Dan Morgan, go out and find a veteran like Gabe Jackson, somebody I brought up, has ties to Seattle, was here just last year, had to replace Nash Jensen at the end of the season. Wasn't great, but he is a veteran. Why not bring him in just to see what he has, if he can be able to push some of the younger guys to be able to get that depth to a place where it needs to be for the Carolina Panthers heading into 2024. So as far as needs at offensive guard, I think they still need to add a veteran. Now, when you get to training camp, the whole vested veteran part of that contract becoming guaranteed after roster cut down. That may lead to the Panthers wanting to cut a player like Gabe Jackson, much like they did last year with Justin McCray. We'll see whether they get to that point. But for me, I still think they need to add another veteran offensive lineman, cheap, low-cost option there at the guard spot. Center, that is a position that the Panthers apparently are not going to address via free agency. It sounded like they were interested in a guy like Lloyd Cushenberry, who was leaving Denver. He ended up signing with the Titans. Don't think they were ever all that interested in Tyler Biadasz. They decided to land on Austin Corbett as their starting center. So that's still a position of need in free agency. If they could find someone who would make sense to come in to be a backup who has experience, I would have liked that. I did see on Tuesday. Let me look at my phone because I didn't write this down. On Tuesday, the Panthers, one of the guys that they could have actually brought in from Seattle, ended up signing a contract elsewhere down in Arizona. Let me find his name. Evan Brown. Yeah, he started last year with the Seahawks. That would have been somebody that could have made sense, especially considering he's on a 1-year, $2.35 million deal with a max value of 2.9 with incentives. I feel like that's something the Panthers could have done, maybe less. I don't know if I want to give him that much money, but they could have done that possibly just to have someone who's played the center position, who's a veteran that could have come in and been the backup for Austin Corbett, been the insurance policy. But again, that is a position that I would like for them to address via the draft and what is considered a very deep and strong center class in the 2024 draft. Offensive tackle, Panthers solid there of Ike Ekwonu, and with Taylor Moton, made a signing on Monday night. Josh Nijman is signed to a 2-year, $8 million deal with $5 million guaranteed at a max value of $15 million, which is pretty impressive for him, who's going to come in and be the swing tackle. As you heard earlier, I mentioned Brady Christensen being the first guy to be the backup at guard. He would have been the swing tackle. He can still play tackle if the Panthers need him to, whether it's going to be at left tackle or probably really at right tackle behind Taylor Moton. Now with Josh Nijman, who played a lot of right tackle with the Packers when he got an opportunity, he clearly is the new swing tackle here in Carolina, just based off of 2 years, $8 million, $5 million guaranteed, max value of $15 million guaranteed. Let's go back to January when I discussed fixing the offensive line and trying to figure out what to do with the Carolina Panthers' supposed Ike Ekwonu problem. One of the solutions for me, whether they kept Ike at left tackle or moved them in, was the Panthers needed to go out and find a veteran tackle just to have someone that they can use to replace Ike if he does not play at a high enough level this year, but also to be able to have a fallback in case something were to happen to Ike or the Taylor Moton, which they did not have last year, especially after Brady Christensen went down with that season-ending injury after week 1 in Atlanta. That's what Josh Nijman can be for the Carolina Panthers. He's played some solid football when given opportunity in Green Bay. He now comes in, is going to be the swing tackle. I love across the board what they've done with the offensive line, bringing in some starting talent, and also what they've done with the depth by bringing in Josh Nijman, putting Brady Christensen in a more traditional fluid role as a swing tackle, but also can play guard, and getting guys like Cade Mays and this Chandler Zavala, who struggled last year, further down the depth chart. Wide receiver. The Panthers are scheduled to conduct multiple visits here this week at the wide receiver position. One of those visits will not happen, as Mike Williams never made it out of New York. He was scheduled to visit with the Jets on Monday. It looked like that actually happened on Tuesday up in New York, and he is now leaving with a 1-year deal worth up to $15 million, as he's agreed to be a New York Jet and will not make it down to Carolina. He was scheduled to also meet with the Pittsburgh Steelers later on this week after meeting with Carolina, but he never made it out of the building there in New York. So the Panthers have missed out on him, which now means that Michael Gallup may be the best option for the Panthers as far as the guys they are reportedly interested in as a veteran wide receiver. On yesterday's show, I mentioned Gallup has really struggled since tearing his ACL. Now, Mike Williams is also coming off an ACL injury, but he's put up bigger numbers than Gallup has as far as his career. And Mike Williams has also been banged up, but he fits a need what the Carolina Panthers would want here. A true X receiver who has a big body, 50-50 ball kind of guy. I don't look at Michael Gallup as that. I don't really see anyone on the roster right now who fits that mold. Now, the Panthers can find that player potentially at 33 or 39 in the draft. My hope was they could go out, find a veteran to do that. Defensively, I'm not really trying to bring in a ton of these veterans. Like I talked about Clowney, we'll get into him later on in the show. I'm not overly concerned about the veterans that you bring on defense. You need to try and bring in some younger players, get them an opportunity. When it comes to offense, especially at the wide receiver position, get some experience for your young quarterback who really struggled last year with the offensive line, not protecting, not playing well, and also with the receivers not getting separation. A little bit different. Want veterans out of wide receiver position. Want to see some younger guys on the defensive side of the ball, especially after trading away Dante Jackson, cutting Von Bell, trading away Brian Burns, and of course, also watching Frankie Louvu walk in free agency. So wanted to see Mike Williams here. Did not happen. Didn't make it out of the building. And that's just free agency, y'all. And I know there's some Panther fans that were upset last week when they saw that Chase Young had made it out of the building without signing a deal, and he signed for $13 million in New Orleans. As I mentioned earlier, I don't think that that's a deal the Carolina Panthers were going to give Chase Young. So when I saw that, never felt like he was truly an option for the Carolina Panthers. Then when I had conversations over the weekend, it sounded like they were still interested in Jadeveon Clowney, which is very much a fact right now. And he was up in New York reportedly, supposed to go up there on Monday, then meet with the Jets on Tuesday. We'll see whether he gets out of that building. But that's how free agency works. You can schedule visits. They may never happen. If you get to the guy first, you can figure out whether it's a fit for you. You can figure out the financials and make sure he does not leave. So if the Panthers really like Michael Gallup, he will not leave Charlotte without a new deal being a Carolina Panther. They need a veteran at wide receiver to go along with Deontay Johnson and with Adam Thielen. Behind them, it's Jonathan Mingo, it's Terrace Marshall, and it's Amir Smith-Marset. The Panthers need to find someone else. That might not be the guy who ends up being a key figure this season, but find a veteran right now and then look in the draft and see what you can do to find a true long-term potential number one option there at wide receiver. Tight end, the Panthers had some logical choices. We've talked about this. Will Dissly, Colby Parkinson, also Noah Fant. All three of those guys had ties to Seattle, ties to Pat McPherson, the new tight end coach in Carolina, and all three of those guys went elsewhere. Fant staying in Seattle, Parkinson going down to LA with the Rams, and then Dissly going down to LA with the Chargers. It did not work out for the Carolina Panthers. A real head scratcher and what they can do right now to really improve that position. Looking at the depth chart, it's Tommy Tremble, Ian Thomas, Stephon Sullivan, Chris Pierce, and Jordan Matthews, the worst tight end group in the NFL. As currently constructed, maybe the draft is where they can go. But as far as free agency goes, I don't know how that need is going to be filled to the level where the Carolina Panthers are really improving that unit overall at tight end. So that's kind of just where they are right now as things stand. Final group looking at the offense, running back. They didn't really need to do anything at the running back position, and they haven't done anything at the running back position outside of giving Raheem Blackshear an exclusive rights free agent deal, offering him that last Monday. Other than that, that's been it, and I'm totally fine. So no need there at running back. Sorry, been sick all last week, so a little choked up. Got to give me it's kind of tough. Got to talk for like all this time. So it's kind of tough. So hang in there with me as I'm getting choked up here on the show. But on the other side, let's talk about the defense. What needs are still there on the defensive side of the ball for the Carolina Panthers? We'll talk about it here in just a moment on Locked on Panthers. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because of eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. Of all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Okay, so we hit on the offensive needs. What about the defensive needs for the Carolina Panthers as they look at the rest of free agency? And understand this, free agency real main part of it was Monday through Wednesday of last week. Then you had the second wave Thursday through the weekend. Now we're really in the third bottom barrel, just trying to find some guys that can sign these incentive-laden deals and possibly some name players out there like a Jadeveon Clowney who could help the Panthers. Saw Chase Young go down to New Orleans. Mike Williams, somebody the Panthers were interested in. He's now with the Jets. A lot of those kind of players are available who don't have that much of a market or coming off an injury, and you're trying to figure out the medicals there and how much they can really provide to you in the upcoming season. So we're basically done with all of the big parts. We're done with the big parts of it. We've gotten to the second wave. We're here. We're going to start focusing in on the draft shortly. But free agency does not end even once we get to April and then to May. It's going to continue until really the Carolina Panthers and the rest of the NFL get down to training camp. And there will still be players like Clowney who may wait until then to sign a deal. The Carolina Panthers brought in Justin Houston, who was supposed to be their edge rusher help last year in August. That could still very well be the case for a player that they bring in this upcoming season. What we'll see whether that is the case. But looking at the defense, start off up front on the defensive line. The Panthers really should be set as far as starters go. Derek Brown, A'Shawn Robinson, Shai Tuttle, not concerned about that at all. Great to get A'Shawn Robinson, who was a run stuffer, really struggled last year with Deshaun Williams coming over from Denver following a Jero Avero to be in that starter spot. He just did not play well enough. Guys like Nick Thurman and LeBron Ray, they're also back. Raekwon Williams, who seemed to have stolen the job from, oh man, was it Marquand McCall? Yeah, name that just escaped me, but I have not heard anything from McCall. He was picked up by the Patriots and he, I guess, failed a medical there. Maybe that was a problem here in Carolina. I don't know what the hell happened with him. Did not look like he was in the league last year after he appeared to be the Carolina Panthers starting nose tackle heading into camp and midway through training camp until that second game against the Giants where Raekwon Williams went out there and seemingly stole the man's job. Now, Williams did not make the roster. He was on the practice squad throughout the season. He is also back here in Carolina. They have three solid starters, you would think. Well, they have Derek Brown and then two guys that need to be better. Shai Tuttle was not great last year. Needs to be much better. A'Shawn Robinson, he's there to fill a role as a run stopper, probably only here for 1 year. So one really good starter, and then we'll see what we get from the rest of the guys here in Carolina this season, and a couple of younger players, in particular Thurman and Ray, that did show some signs last year of being some decent depth for the Carolina Panthers. They'll, of course, need to probably add some more bodies, and that's going to be the case of all the position groups just to get to 90 men by training camp here in Charlotte. So I think overall, as far as like the key contributors on the defensive line, they have them here in Carolina with Brown, Robinson, Tuttle, and the other guys that got some spot starts and opportunities last year. In 2023. Edge, looking at this, the Panthers are certainly in some desperate need for some edge rusher help after trading away Brian Burns and losing Yetur Gross-Matos. And I presume the same thing is going to be said for Marquise Haynes, who they didn't really have at all last year because he's still a free agent. So those three guys seem to be gone from Carolina. Well, two of them are definitely gone. The other one seems to absolutely be gone from Carolina. They did, of course, bring in DJ Wonnum. They signed Caleb Chase on, and they're interested in bringing Jadeveon Clowney back home to the Carolinas. Will that happen? We will see. We already saw Mike Williams might not make it out of the building up in New York with the Jets as of this recording on Tuesday, March 19th at 5:44 p.m. I am not seeing any reports of Jadeveon Clowney having signed with the New York Jets. So there's still hope for the Carolina Panthers, but if you let somebody out the building without a deal, that could be bad news. Clowney, though, as I mentioned before on previous show last week, he is someone who has not signed a deal at all, ever, not one single time in his career in March. He has waited until April, until May, until August, like last year, before signing a deal and wants to be patient at this stage of his career at 31 years old. There really is no rush for him. He should try to figure out what the right fit is. And he's also a kind of player who doesn't want to have to go through the offseason program, doesn't want to be out there for OTAs, doesn't want to be out there for mandatory minicamp. Quite honestly, probably doesn't really want to be out there for training camp. Wants to come in during the preseason, pick things up, and play the role as an edge rusher. And he did that last year in Baltimore and was pretty damn good for the Ravens. Now, he could go back to Baltimore. He could come here to Carolina. He could go to New York with the Jets. We'll see how that works out. But it is a big need for the Carolina Panthers, and it's still a need where I understand the appetite for the team and for the fans to want Clowney here. And I think that it would be a good signing for the Carolina Panthers. He's a player coming off of a 9.5 sack season. I'm just still trying to sit here and tell you bringing in Clowney is not going to necessarily change things. Now, if he does not come, it's going to be a complete disaster probably at the edge rusher spot for the Carolina Panthers in 2024. And even if Clowney does come based off of his history of being an inconsistent player since he's left Houston, it could still very well be a complete disaster for the Carolina Panthers at edge rusher. That is a spot that's going to take time. The hope is that DJ Wonnum can come in, bring some consistency after having 2 8-sack seasons so far in his career and really elevate into a better player in a Jero Vero scheme this year. And we'll see how that all works out down the road as far as who the defense coordinator may be, whether it's a Jero or somebody else. But that's the hope for the Carolina Panthers. Maybe Caleb Chason can give them something this year. And then Clowney can be a veteran presence and help out those guys who were already mentioned. And also some of the younger players like Amari Barno and in particular DJ Johnson, who they traded up in the 3rd round to get last year and then gave them a 0 in the sack column this past season. Big time need for the Carolina Panthers. Just don't think there's any big time players that they can go out and get. There were players who have had big time seasons in the past, but they're also aging players who have been inconsistent, and that is Jadeveon Clowney. Still would be a nice signing for the Carolina Panthers, and as a position that certainly the Panthers need to find someone, a veteran, to come in and help them. Did it last year, did not work. Hopefully this time it will be the charm for the Carolina Panthers, and they're maybe trades out there. Hassan Reddick, hello. Maybe come back to Carolina. Linebacker, they have their starters in Josie Jewell and in Shaq Thompson. It's really just about depth right now. Chandler Wooten, Luigi Villane, and Villain, and Clyden Charles are all on the roster primarily as special teams players. So finding a veteran like a Kamugri Hill and a Deion Jones, one of those kind of type of players, maybe even bringing one of them back if that's what works for the Panthers, as both of them are still very much free agents right now, that would help Carolina. I think they need to go out and do that, and they've really been in the market like that for the last couple seasons where you bring in a player like a what was his name? Corey Littleton. And then you bring in the 2 guys I just mentioned last year. That's where the Panthers are at, just trying to find a vet who can come in, who's been able to start in the league and can be able to back up Shaq Thompson and Josie Jewell. You already have the special teams guys who I imagine would probably stick around on the roster here this season. Corner, it's JC, it's Dane Jackson, it's Troy Hill, and a bunch of no names right now for the Panthers. Deshaun Jameson, he's coming back. He got opportunities last year. You also have DiCaprio Boodle, who got opportunities last year for the Panthers in this defense. So that's great. They need to add a veteran. Absolutely. There has to be a low-cost option out there for the Panthers. Just saw Shaquille Griffin. He signed a deal to go to the Vikings, so he's now off the board for the Panthers. I would like to see them find another veteran corner to go out and pay. Not a lot of money, of course, like vet men, $2 million plus incentives, whatever you want to do. I still think that's a position where they need a warm body who has played in the league and has had enough success to still be in the league. That's what I think the Panthers need to do. So they definitely need another corner in my eyes. Safety will be interesting to see how they build the depth there. Clearly, Jordan Fuller and Xavier Woods are going to be the starters there at that position in 2024 as things presently stand. You have Jamie Robinson, who the Panthers drafted last year in the 5th round, right? Yeah, the 5th round. Then Alex Cook, who they signed off of the Raiders practice squad. He started a couple games last year in favor of Sam Franklin, who had filled in after Woods and Von Bell both went down with injuries. Alex Cook came in and played fairly well. He's back here in Carolina as well. So you have 2 younger players who can be depth to those other guys. I would still think that they're going to want to bring somebody in. A lot of this now, y'all, is just trying to find some depth pieces. But I think at corner, trying to find somebody who can maybe be a low-cost option who can compete with Dane Jackson. I'd like to see that. Edge, you're looking for a starter, and Clowney would be the guy right now the Panthers are certainly targeting. Think they're good on defensive line, linebacker. You're looking for depth, safety. You're looking for depth. Not a ton of big-time have to have this kind of guy moves to the Carolina Panthers. Looking at it, I feel like wide receiver. Need to find a veteran wide receiver to come in to be a starter. You need to compete at least at the starting position. You need to find a starter, edge rusher, and tight end feels like that ship has sailed for the Carolina Panthers. That's where things stand as far as the remaining needs and free agency for the Carolina Panthers, in my eyes, as they start to focus on pro days and the 2024 NFL draft. So what's next? We'll talk about it here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. Say goodbye to busted brackets, because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a number one seed, it's time to go dancing on America's number one sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if their first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. And speaking of who's going to win it all right now, y'all, you go on FanDuel, which I've gone and done, been on that app since everything became legal here in North Carolina. I've been betting probably a little bit more than I should have. I've been winning some money. Thank you to UConn. If you bet on a national championship pick, every game that team wins, you get $10 back in bonus bets. So I would suggest you probably vote on a team like UConn, and you can get all of those bonus bets over the next month as March Madness is going on. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut the nets down. So what's next for the Carolina Panthers? They have spent most of the money that they have in free agency to go out and rebuild the offensive line. They've traded for Deontay Johnson. They brought in some new starters on the defensive line at linebacker and in the secondary. What else can they really do other than add some depth and maybe another starter there at the edge rusher spot? That's a great question. Looking at overthecap.com, the Panthers have $14 million in cap space. Really, it's $14 million. I'm not going to say all this. It's about $15 million. They're just looking at it right now. They are $41 short of $15 million of cap space. So let's round up to $41. Say the Panthers have $15 million of cap space. Now the contracts, Jordan Fuller, Amir Smith-Marset, and K'Lavon Chaisson have not been posted to overthecap.com. So that is not accounting for them right now. I don't imagine their cap hits are going to be very high anyways. So the Panthers probably have, give or take, $10-11 million of cap space available to them. There are still ways to open up more cap space. We talked about this before free agency started. They could extend Taylor Moton. That'd be $13 million. They could restructure him, and they have not done a lot of restructuring. So kudos to Dan Morgan and to Brant Tillis, two men who came out, at least Dan Morgan came out and said, we're not going to do that. Scott, he liked to do restructures. We're not doing that anymore here in Carolina, he said. And they haven't done it outside of Ian Thomas still sticking around here in Carolina somehow, some way. They have not restructured deals. Derek Brown, though, extending him, that can open up $8 million of cap space for the Carolina Panthers that they could use on their draft class for in-season moves, and also to go out there and sign a local product who went to South Point High School, play at the University of South Carolina, and could be making a homecoming here to Carolina at a much-needed spot out at edge rusher. They could use that for something like that. Or not. We'll see what the Panthers decide to do. I still think that even without Mike Williams, and that is certainly a bit of a gut punch, not that much of a gut punch. It stinks for Bryce Young because he does need help, and getting Deontay Johnson is not enough. It is not enough for the Carolina Panthers offensively and for Bryce Young in 2024. And at some point in time this offseason, going to wait until the draft happens, probably in May, I'm going to have a conversation with you. We're going to have this conversation together. Did the Panthers do enough to help Bryce Young? Right now, offensive line-wise, yes. Weapons-wise, no. Still doesn't have a pass-catching tight end, has a better receiver, a guy who can separate, an upgrade from DJ Chark, certainly, and Deontay Johnson, but not enough. What are they going to get at Adam Thielen this year? He'll be 34 years old. The decline, he's already declined from where he was in the past. Last season being the only option, he was a revelation for the Panthers. I thought he was spectacular. I thought he could be a good player in 2023 at the age of 33. But now I've always been concerned about 2024 at the age of 34. What are you getting out of Adam Thielen? How much progress are you going to see out of Jonathan Mingo? If Terrace Marshall's sticking around, is it going to finally happen ever for Terrace Marshall? So right now, looking at it, I still feel like, as I just talked to y'all early on the show, they need to add a veteran. That's what should be next for the Carolina Panthers. Michael Gallup does not excite me, quite honestly, but he is someone who has made plays in the NFL before, and he certainly is better than all the guys on the roster not named Adam Thielen and Deontay Johnson. So why not? Don't give him a lot of money. He's only going to be here for probably a year anyways. The Panthers are going to bring him in. And if they like him, the medical's clear, he'll probably be a Carolina Panther. So prepare yourself for that. It's not Mike Williams. It's not the sexy kind of signing. But as I try to tell y'all, we're at the stage where the sexy signings really aren't even going to happen. And even the potential sexy signing Clowney may not even be that sexy once things end up playing out through the season. It could be sexy, but it may not be sexy. We will see how that works out for the Panthers. So that's what I'm kind of looking to see. Waiting on a receiver, waiting on Clowney. And outside of that, just a couple of depth piece moves here sprinkled in from here and there, and really looking ahead to the draft and seeing what players they can get that can actually be long-term solutions to the problem the Carolina Panthers have in winning games. So we'll see how that all works out down the road. All right, it's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where on Friday, I'm right back here in this chair with this mic, answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions, either at me or DM me. But dang it, follow me if you like on Twitter at Julian Council to get those questions into me now. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding, and I'll talk to y'all on Thursday.